Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Wednesday's edition of the Hump Day Hiatus. Today, you get myself and Ruby. She's here hanging out with us as usual. She loves the sunniest spot in here, which is on my desk right by the window. So that's typically where she be. So, for those of you who weren't able to make it, I was chatting with Melissa Toller on Sunday. With our busy schedules, we weren't able to make a Wednesday work, so we just decided to do what we could, and we really wanted to chat and get information and our conversation out to you. So you can check the replay out if you'd like. It's on my Facebook page, also in the Hump Day Hiatus event group as well, posted there, on my website and then on my YouTube channel, Reclaiming the Wild. So today I wanted to just take a few moments to share a little bit more about how I came to this work and why I'm so passionate about it. So a little bit of history about myself, very similar to a lot of other folks that do eating disorder work, body image work, healing. We come to it from lived experience. So I have, in my history, some personal experience with binge eating disorder, as well as orthorexia. And for those of you who aren't sure what orthorexia is, basically is an unhealthy, oh, now she wants down. It's basically an unhealthy obsession with healthy food. So in the world that we're living in right now with this culture, it's very, very easy to apply, dieting behaviors and food rules and restricting to any sort of diet. So for myself, I went from really being preoccupied with my weight and my size, even though I'm in a body that is, deemed conventionally attractive and is acceptable. I still carried a lot of internalized weight stigma and bias about my own body, even though I live in a body that does carry quite a lot of privilege. And when I talk about privilege, what I mean is that because of my body size, shape, my skin color, my socioeconomic status, where I live in the world, I have access to a lot of things that so many folks in the world don't have access to. And I think it's really important, that we recognize where our privileges lie. I also am straight. I identify with the parts that I was born with, as female. So there's a lot of things that can work against us in this world when we don't fit the quote unquote norms. And those norms are something that are damaging for everyone, right? Especially when we look at body size, and fat phobia, those of us that exist in larger bodies or fat bodies, we experience weight stigma, we experience oppression, I shouldn't say we, I'm not included in that group, but there's a lot of oppression that is experienced because of body size. And so, those experience fear of fat that are in larger bodies. And then those of us that are not in larger bodies, we fear becoming fat because of how our society views it. And, we're taught that fat is unhealthy. We're taught that most those folks that are in larger bodies, or if we have a larger body, there's all sorts of pejorative words that we associate with it. Lazy, often I hear clients and folks that I speak to, they think that they are gross, they're disgusting. And this is what we're taught. Right? We shame bodies in our culture, and this, as a result, this is how we view them. And so we've developed this hierarchy of bodies that says the thin and pretty ones are worth more than those that aren't. And this simply is just not true. If we take a look at the actual weight science that's out there, we can find a plethora of evidence that really contradicts everything that we're told about the risks that are associated with being obese and overweight. And those are two terms that I don't use in my practice. They are terms that have been developed to pathologize the body. And I really like, using terms that don't do that, and also terms that can, that help folks embody themselves a little bit more. So all that being said, cut back to orthorexia, and it's easy to see why we're so fixated on health and on, living our best lives, because our culture shames anyone or anything that isn't that currently at this moment. Right? And as human beings, we don't want to feel shame. We don't want to, be called out. We want to fit in. And so, taking care of ourselves, and buying into this endless self-improvement project is something that has kind of become a part of being alive in our Western culture right now. And, we value people and bodies more that are actively seeking to pursue health. And even that in itself is problematic, because we focus so much, and I mean, media, healthcare systems, insurance companies, health and wellness industry, right? Selling us all these products that we need to be well, focus so much on the pieces of health that fall underneath the category of personal responsibility. So what we're eating, how we're moving, any sort of kind of self-care that we're engaging in. And those personal behaviors combined with our genetics actually only account for about 25% of our total overall health outcomes, right? So we're living in this world where we're taught that we are responsible for our health, that our health is in fact within our control, when the research and the data out there actually shows that only 25% of it actually is. The rest of what are known as the social determinants of health take care of that other 75%. And, those are things such as our socioeconomic status, where we live in the world, our access to healthcare, our access to food. We've got our racial background, ethnic backgrounds included in there as well. And so, if we really are genuinely concerned about improving folks' health as individuals, because everyone has some sort of, philosophy on how to be well in their body. And we live right now in a time and place where that information flows freely. Everybody's got advice and everybody seems to be an expert nowadays. And, we really aren't in as much control as we think. And if we do really want to work on and help to improve health overall, we really need to think about the bigger picture. We need to think about how many people don't have access to the foods that the rest of us do. How many folks go into the doctor's office and, because they show up in a larger body, they have their symptoms, their concerns completely just brushed aside and are told to lose weight. How does that impact our health, right? When you go to the place where you're supposed to be taken care of and these questions are supposed to be answered, and you're basically dismissed because of how your body shows up in the room. So there are so many areas and places that we could focus our energy to really build a world that's rooted in equality, right? And that in itself is going to help change health outcomes, right? If we focus on that, we're going to actually make noticeable change. You have people of other ethnic backgrounds, non-white, and racial backgrounds who are living in fear walking down the street because of the stigma and the oppression that they experience, And so it doesn't matter what we put into our mouths. It doesn't matter what physical activity we engage in. If every day you're living your life in fear for what's going to happen to you when you walk to school, when you walk to the grocery store, when you're in the grocery store, that level of chronic stress, tension, and trauma has huge bearings on our health outcomes. Anyway, that was a little bit of a tangent there, but so we live in a world where bodies are food is moralized, our actions are moralized, and those who are pursuing what we're told we're supposed to be pursuing have more value. So, of course we want to capitalize on this privilege, and, we want to try to control the size and shape of our bodies so that we don't experience bullying, so we don't experience pain, shame. And at the end of the day, the size of our body is really not in our control as much as we are taught and told to believe that it is. And once upon a time, I clung to that belief that my health was a direct reflection of everything that I said and did. And mostly I was thinking on a physical level, not, any other level, not a social level, not an emotional level, not a spiritual level. It was all just about the physical body. And so, I engaged in behaviors to keep my body looking a certain way that I now look back on and kind of go, holy fuck, that was actually the furthest thing from healthy. Because something that I rarely ever allowed myself to experience, which I now know, for me personally, is a cornerstone of how I feel in my body, and my well-being, is pleasure. Before, I was chatting with Meg Bradbury, and we were talking about orthorexia and all of the things, that we did, and the behaviors that we engaged in while we were in the throes of this, disorder. And as Meg said in one of her recent videos, it's not a joke. And orthorexia is very serious, as are all other eating disorders and mental illnesses. And I kind of reflected on that for a little bit, and then her and I had a little follow-up chat, and I said, I'm really grateful that I can actually find humor in this now, because when I was in it, like, there was no humor, no pleasure, nothing. Everything I did was all about control. It was about restraint, and it was about restricting. It was so militant that, I couldn't even allow myself to experience pleasure and joy for a few reasons, that I'm still kind of grappling with how to articulate. But mostly, I think it had to do with the fact that, I always kind of felt like I needed to hang on to the reins. Like I was driving the ship, and the idea that there was someone else in control, or I wasn't in control, and I couldn't impact the outcomes as much as I thought I could, was terrifying. And, anytime I did let go of the reins, it was labeled very, very quickly as, falling off the wagon, or being bad, or, just saying, fuck it, I'm going to go have fun for a day, but tomorrow we're going to restart, gonna get back on the bandwagon. And it's really, really hard to enjoy things, to have any room for spontaneity, to have any room for pleasure, when you're constantly having to be so vigilant about everything that you do with your body. And so I've unpacked for quite a long time, where this comes from, and really, how I've needed to move in different directions that actually, are really truly rooted in support and caring for my being and where my body is at now. And this shit is generational, like those of us that are socialized female, it's hardcore. We're taught that we're supposed to be certain things. We're supposed to look certain ways. We're supposed to behave in certain manners. And if we don't, we're chastised. And so, from a very young age, we start to disown natural pieces of ourselves that make us unique, that make us who we are, that connect us with our true nature, our innate beings, which is a being in nature, right? It's really easy for us to forget that, because we live in all these concrete spaces and drive around in all these, metal cars, and we spend very little time being out in the natural world, but we are a part of it. And And I think that, you know, the way that we view success in the Western world here, you know, and all of the things that we're supposed to do require us to abandon nature, require us to abandon trust in ourselves and place it in systems and people and places outside of us in order to get ahead or get where, you know, we're meant to be. And in doing so, we have to abandon those pieces of ourselves that might say, like, this doesn't feel good, but I don't really see any other way because this is what everybody's doing. You know, it requires us to shut down aspects of ourselves that we're told are not appropriate in certain social circles or in certain professions, you know? And I always find myself thinking about, like, who the fuck invented these rules? You know, like, who told us that these were the ways that we needed to be? Like, who is this for? Right? And the majority of the time, the answer comes back to white men, right? So white men are making these decisions, how systems are working and how we're all supposed to show up in the world. And yet they have no clue what the world is like for us, right? So why can't we create that for ourselves? Why these rules, right? Why these norms, even gender norms, you know, like, why do we need to have these labels, you know? And so it's no wonder that we're fucked up. It's no wonder that, you know, I've spent the last decade trying to figure out who I am, because who we are is taught out of us. Who we are is taught out of us. We come into this world fully embodying and taking up the space of our bodies. And as we grow and as we're socialized, you know, we're taught to take up less and less space. We're taught to behave, right? To whoever's idea of what behaving means. And we're really taught to disconnect from our bodies, to disconnect from ourselves. And in doing so, we lose access to so much wisdom. We lose access to our truth, right? And it's hard to feel grounded. It's hard to feel safe. It's hard to feel content. It's hard to feel supported when we don't have any of that within ourselves, when we can't offer that to ourselves. So suffice it to say, all of these things and more were wrapped up in my complicated history with food. And I used food in so many ways, you know, comfort, punishment, control, status, privilege, you know, because who has never, you know, who hasn't heard someone be congratulated on their weight loss? Who hasn't heard someone say, like, oh my gosh, I wish I had your willpower. Like, I just can't even, you know? So, you know, we put folks who are behaving in these ways up on pedestals. And again, you know, just feeding into this hierarchy of bodies. When you compliment someone else on their weight loss, or when you shame your own body and you're in a smaller body than someone that you're with, you're essentially telling them that their body is wrong too. Right? And this is one of the reasons why I'm doing the workshop that I'm doing on cultivating body confident kids, because almost everything that I learned about my body being wrong came at a very young age from my family. And no one ever commented about my body, right? They were always commenting on their own body. I'm not sure what happened to my video here. And so it's through osmosis. And so if we can start to look at the ways that we're talking to ourselves, that we're talking to others, you know, we can influence and impact how much of this stuff gets passed down and how much of it ends with us, right? We can empower future generations to be in their bodies, to trust their bodies, to rely on the wisdom of their bodies and see that it's valuable, right? That it's just as valuable, if not more valuable, than the knowledge that we learn from outside of ourselves. And so pleasure, as one of the core elements of a body trust practice, has been so crucial to my healing. It's really helped me to let go of the reins. And in a culture that tells us that, pleasure is for the select few who are doing it right, that, pleasure is this naughty thing, this guilty pleasure, right? Pleasure is a reward. Like, you can't play until you get all your work done. It's a very rebellious and radical act to start to reclaim pleasure. And for me, it has been an extremely liberating act. Starting to pay attention to what brings me pleasure has really been one of the most important things that's helped me to start to really, really find out who I am. One of my favorite quotes by Nair Wahid is, "You will find your way. It's in the same place as your love." And I absolutely, wholeheartedly agree. Do what you love, do what lights you up, do what makes you feel good, and you will find your way, right? These cues, these messages, these are our body's way of saying, yes, 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 you're on the right track, keep going, right? And so let's take a look. I invite you to think about pleasure for a little bit and, see where you allow yourself to have pleasure. What's your relationship with pleasure look like? In our body trust work, there's a few questions that we ask. People who seek pleasure are, right? Who gets to experience pleasure? In our culture, in your family, in an ideal world, what does pleasure feel like? And where do you experience in your body? Where might you feel a yes in your body? Where might you feel a no? And then we can really start to look at what satisfies us. So I think I'm going to take a pause and end there and say thank you for tuning in. I'm not sure what happened to the video. I actually don't even know if this is still recording. It's showing me that it is. But yeah, I'm just going to tinker around with the video once I get off here. And hopefully I'll be able to sort things out and the replay will be there. If not video, maybe only the audio for today. Yeah, not too sure. But thanks for tuning in. So next week, I'm going to be here again solo. Typically the fourth Wednesday of the month, I will be solo, just talking a little bit about the upcoming guests that I'm going to be having on, talking about the body trust core element that we're going to be focusing on for the month. And next month, we are going to be doing, reconnect with your body's needs and boundaries. So stay tuned for that one. I've got some really great guests. So 2 of my fellow body trust providers are going to be joining us. And we'll be taking a look at that core element. Those of you that are in the Waterloo area, I've got a workshop coming up on October 1st. I'm going to be teaching at the Princess Cafe, cultivating body confident kids. So we're going to be looking at the division of responsibility in eating. What's your responsibility? What's your kid's responsibility? And inclusive ways that we can talk about bodies, as well as how we can raise competent eaters, so those eaters that aren't afraid of food, don't fear food, don't stress about food, right? Just are able to listen to their body and choose what feels good for them at that time. I'm also going to be doing that course in Wingham on September 28th, and that is presented by White Willow. So you can check us out there. All the information's on my Facebook page and Instagram page, as well as my website, reclaimingthewild.com. And then my dear friend Suzanne, who I believe was on episode 3 with me, her and I are just starting an intuitive eating support group. So it's a 6-week program that we're going to be doing starting mid-October. We're just about to launch it and registration. We're going to be taking a look at the principles of intuitive eating, and then we're also going to be looking at how you can feel more confident in the body you have now, trust and listen to your body around food, how you can experience more joy, pleasure, and freedom in life instead of waiting until that weight comes off. We're going to help you seize it and start living now as you are. And then unlearn some more myths about food and bodies and health and the actual science behind dieting and why it doesn't work, right? And we really, really want you to know that your body is not a problem. You are not a failure, that diets are what fails us. We don't fail the diets fail us, because our bodies are not meant for restriction. So check that out. I'll share a little announcement and post once that's all ready to rock. So until next week, I will be posting probably a few little short videos, and you can find me over on Instagram. So have a lovely, lovely rest of your week, everyone, and we shall chat with you soon. Thanks. Bye.